Morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to TiE Sustainable Summit, the largest summit hosted by TiE Hyderabad. We have about 40,000 registrations and the number is still going. So this is JT Rao, founder and CMD of WinAMR. I'm excited to introduce the topic to the screen, sustainable e-waste recycling. In today's world, this is a compelling topic and needs rightful attention. I'm glad to introduce the moderator, Dr. Rakesh Bhatia, for the panel. Dr. Rakesh Bhatia is the founder and CEO of the Capilne, a SaaS-based provider for the venture capital, private equity, and innovation ecosystem. Rakesh has over 2 decades of global leadership experience. He holds a doctorate in business administration from GEM Paris with research interest in merger and acquisitions and sense making. Dr. Rakesh Bhatia, so happy to have you here. Please take over from here.
Pleasure, JT Rao. Thank you so much
for
the kind
of the discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Welcome everyone to the TiE Sustainability Summit, and we are all glad to be here. Again, as JT Rao said, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are attending the session from right now. We have a very interesting topic of the e-waste recycling, sustainable e-waste recycling. And to discuss that, I have a very, very interesting panel of practitioners and investors alike in the session. And we will probably be looking at the whole e-waste recycling from 3 different angles today. We will be discussing the market as a whole, the market opportunity. We will be discussing the regulatory aspects around the e-waste management, not just in India, but probably a quick lens globally. And then we'll see what is driving the investments, what are investors looking at, and so on. But before we get into that, allow me to introduce our panelists today. Right now, we have with us Karan Thakur. Karan is the founder and CEO of the recycling company, also known as Treco. It is one of India's leading e-waste management company. Karan has been at the forefront in creating awareness of awareness and recycling e-waste for over 10 years now. He is part of the circular economy in e-waste committee with NITI Aayog and is an active member in many national international forums. The recycling company is now forayed into solar panel recycling and lithium ion battery recycling. That's an interesting topic. We'll probably touch upon that with all the EV part coming in. But before that, allow me to introduce Dave. Dave Raman has over 25 years of experience with domestic and foreign financial institutions. He held director level positions in investment banking businesses with Credit Suisse and HSBC, where he achieved significant growth in terms of revenue and market share for businesses. As an investment banker and an institutional broker, he has successfully raised more than $1.25 billion. Very interesting. As managing partner at Lastaki, Dave has successfully advised multiple M&A transactions valued at over $500 million and raised over $200 million of capital. He has also been an advisor on corporate strategy and been on the board of several organizations previously. Dave is also a founder, director, and member of the investment committee at Triton. Triton, an early stage fund focused on investing in B2B tech services companies in India. Triton invests into the theme that corporate India will become one day one of the largest users of technology in the world. And I know that they have been investing in some of the sustainability and recycling businesses as well. Dave is an MBA from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. Then joining us, we have Pranshu. Welcome, Pranshu. Pranshu Singhal is the founder of Karo Sambhav, EPR in e-waste, plastic and batteries and glass. Pranshu is an Aspen Fellow, Ashoka Fellow, Chevening Fellow, Aspire Fellow. Karo Sambhav collaborates with companies and enables them to close their material loops by designing and implementing transformative extended producer responsibility, EPR as we know it, for waste from electronic waste, plastic packaging, batteries, and glass. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today. Looking for a very interesting chat with all of you being hands-on, very closely observing this industry, very well aware of what it is. And again, just to reiterate, we are looking at three major aspects from our discussion today: a market opportunity as a whole in e-waste recycling, governance and regulatory aspects, and investments, what drives investments and all. But I think, like me, in a couple of days back, many of the people who are in audience today perhaps have the same question, and that's what we will probably start with as a foundation for this discussion: is why e-waste recycling as a separate domain? Because fundamentally, e-waste comprises of all those aspects which have generally been used otherwise: plastic, glass, water, metal, whatever it is, right? So that's probably the first thing we would like to start with as a foundation. And I would point that question to Karan to start with, right? And then we'll build on top of that on all the other aspects that I have been speaking about. Karan.
Firstly, thank you, Rakesh, for such a kind introduction, and happy to be here. So I think the question should be, what is e-waste? Had I not quit my job and selected this field for myself and passionate about environment, I don't think even I would have understood that. For a normal man, electronic waste usually just is, laptop or computers and, mobile phone. But electronic waste is a lot more than that. I mean, we are surrounded by electronic and electricals. And once that becomes obsolete, it is all a part of e-waste. Like even today, we did a e-waste drive yesterday on the occasion of on Gandhi Jayanti, and we got a phenomenal response. So fortunately, that is changing. But even today, I think the definition of e-waste is unclear for a normal person to understand, and hence he will understand that what are the consequences of recycling. So we are surrounded by electronics, and once it becomes obsolete, wires, cables, tube lights, CFL, everything. And I think this pandemic has also taught us that we are just connected because of electronics and electricals around us. So why e-waste is because I think in the last couple of decades, there has been a realization that it is not just a piece of gadget. It does contain some hazardous substances that, if not recycled right way or treated the right way, can cause a lot of harm to the environment. So this growing realization and the fact at which, so there is rapid consumption. We are also living in a use and throw economy. And, I think very recently a Rights to Repair Act has also come, and there is a lot of debate around it. That so the rate at which that we are consuming and generating this waste and the impact it has on environment has given a definite center stage to the subject, that why e-waste. And India, so to say, is now the third largest e-waste generating nation. And I'm at least glad that, now we recognize it as hazardous because of the e-waste tool. So it is no longer just a category of waste, but because of the hazardous substances and carcinogenic substances, like I say, printer cartridges, tube lights, wires, cables, a lot of these equipment and category of substances need a little special attention. If not processed the right way and with the right technology, it can cause a lot of harm to environment. So I think that is why e-waste is an important subject right now. And at the same time, as an economy, as we keep growing and as we foray into electric vehicles and we foray into robotics and a lot of other things, this category of waste is only going to increase. So if you don't pay attention now, and if you don't ensure that, there is a recycling system that has been put in place, then it can pose some serious threats in the near future.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And again, as I had initially said, and you just pointed that out as well, I think that question keeps on hitting my head personally, and I'm sure many people do. We say that we are saving environment by switching from fossil or hydrocarbons to electronic or electric battery-based mobility. But is that really true? Because I know that it has its own set of challenges in terms of environment and the waste that it is producing. But we'll come back to that question. I'll go to Pranshu next. Pranshu, so we just heard Karan talking about why e-waste needs a separate attention. What is e-waste exactly, and it's hazardous and so on. And we also heard that India probably is the third largest producer of e-waste. What does that really mean in terms of market opportunity for a new entrepreneur coming in or for the companies like yourselves?
Sure. Hi, Rakesh, and thank you for this great conference. I'll first like to discuss the previous question a bit. E-waste requires separate attention just because it is too complex. Any product that will turn into e-waste, especially the gadgets that we are nowadays using, would contain nothing less than 500 to 1,000 compounds, various mixes, various types of elements merged into another. And while attaching them is easy, detaching them is almost impossible. So the complexity of electronics itself requires so much deep attention that even right now, if you look at the kind of infrastructure that is being created, the kind of solutions that are being created for electronics waste management, they are highly insufficient considering the increasing complexity and the way we are merging multiple materials, elements, compound, and making newer compounds. So that's the biggest challenge. Now, in terms of the market size, well, this e-waste is the fastest growing waste stream in the world, and most importantly, if you look at its CAGR, it is over 25%, roughly around 30% in India, and there is no specific number, but the most commonly known figure is India is generating now over 5 million tons of electronic waste. So the numbers are huge. And e-waste is a great source of multiple materials. Precious metals have been talked about a lot. But if we go beyond precious metals, rare earths are there. Even simple plastics, the amount of plastics that you can derive, almost 35 to 40% of e-waste is plastics nowadays, maybe more even, depending on the product that we talk of. So if we can do some re-engineering of the plastics, even the amount of fossil fuels that one can save is also huge. So it's an endless possibility space. And I also see possibilities in multiple areas. The first is, collection systems. We have almost no deep collection systems as of now. Some things are budding up, but still very early stages. Second is recycling, dismantling and recycling spaces. Responsible, I would use the word responsible here very importantly. How do we ensure that clean, responsible dismantling, recycling spaces are coming up in a decentralized way? Otherwise, we are transporting e-waste to very vast distances. And then the third is secondary material utilization. How do we ensure the materials coming out of this, materials recovered from recycling processes, are going back to create similar products? So there are very wide spaces for action.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that point up. In fact, that is something that I would probably like to have it elaborated a little more in interest of the audience, particularly those who are looking at e-waste recycling as a entrepreneurship opportunity. Now, picking up from what you said, Pranshu, and I probably would like to hear both from Karan and you on this, is if we see there's a whole supply chain into the recycling business as well, right? Like you yourself said, right, from collection to dismantling to whatever, disposal, sales, resales, or whichever it is. Are these steps of the supply chain a separate business opportunity by itself, or every provider does it end to end? If they do not, what is your advice for a new entrepreneur to look at when they want to pick up one of those steps of the supply chain to get into that as a business? Pranshu, let's start with you.
Yeah, I believe each and every, we can cut micro slices of the whole thing and create value in each and every part. Even if we were to talk of, let's say, collection systems, there are so many channels, from a retail channel to a door-to-door channel to a waste picker aggregator channel to a bulk consumer channel. One could specialize just even in one of those aspects and do innovation. Right now, we are seeing, including organizations like us, playing a significant role across the value chain. But that creates, also limitations in terms of how much innovation can you do in each and every part. So if there are players who are doing innovation in each and every aspect, they could become big value adders on their own. You don't have to be a value player across. If we talk of, for example, recycling, you could just be a dismantler, a fantastic clean dismantler, which gives 100% transparency to whosoever. and allows full data visibility. That in itself is so much in demand today, because we have very few organizations who are willing to give that level of visibility. And you can also dismantle to a very deep depth. Today, most of the organizations are either crushing the waste or they are doing some level of dismantling, not to the largest extent possible. So I believe the space allows micro slicing to a very large extent.
Sure. Karan, your thoughts on this?
My personal view is that the last 10 to 15 years, there has been a great amount of work that, all the stakeholders have done. And there has been a lot of experimentation that has happened. The outcome of that is that there has been a good amount of awareness around the subject. Like, to give you an example, on 15th August, you will be surprised that in a city like Sangli, in a small place like Sangli, there was 7,000 kgs of e-waste collected. People came forward and they all deposited. So what it all shows is that there has been a great amount of awareness about this subject, and I think there are parts of it which are accepting it. And I think there are a lot of opportunities, because waste has a lot of value, but once it is segregated, so segregating waste is important.
Sure.
Plastic is a problem because it is mixed with a lot of things. Similarly with electronic waste, when a lot of categories of electronic waste is clubbed together, segregation is an issue. But there can be a lot of innovation, there can be a lot of tech. A few of these initiatives we are working on ourselves, where just on the collection mechanism, where you can reach out to individuals. B2B again is a very different gameplay, and ensure that there is right amount of information being given to the consumer, to an individual, and it is being collected in that manner where it is segregated and comes to that. So that consolidation and that kind of like, say for example, Swiggy or a Zomato, that similar model can be done, but a lot of resources and a lot of commitment has to be given in this particular thing. On the recycling side, again, we just discussed in the opening statement, you can imagine the types of electronic waste that are there, the categories that are there. So there can be recycling capabilities and capex that can be invested and that can be built in each of these categories.
Mm-hmm.
And that itself, India is very big. So there could be somebody who can just recycle refrigerators and home appliances. There could be somebody who could just recycle a particular category. So there are, once you specialize on any of these verticals, there is a lot. And I think since TiE is a platform for entrepreneurs where people come seeking ideas on entrepreneurship, I think the collection model is where India has a big opportunity. Any innovation and any innovation on logistics, on tech, enabler, etc., I think has got big opportunities.
Very cool. Thank you so much. So I'll probably take a pause from the opportunity here and go to Dave. So Dave, you have seen this industry from multiple aspects, as an investor, as an advisor, as a consultant, working closely with some of the companies that I am aware of that you have invested in. We just saw that it's probably, the rough number is 5 million ton of e-waste in India, and about 55 million ton between US, China and India. That's the three largest e-waste producer. But then, considering the e-waste generation and the growing awareness, is there enough investment happening in this space?
So clearly not, right? And actually, I'm going to go back a little bit to your earlier question and kind of talk about why maybe the investments are not happening in the way they should happen. Mm-hmm. And there are some challenges actually in exactly the way the whole problem is, and what a solution will need to look like to for it to be economically viable, right? Which is where investors will come in. So I think Pranshu was absolutely right in saying that, look, you can, today companies are probably trying to do everything, which doesn't allow for adequate innovation because the problem is so complex, right? At each stage. Now, the problem is, if you kind of focus on one thing, you're very dependent on the ecosystem developing in other parts of the channel for your solution to finally reach the right place and to for you to kind of make money out of it, mm-hmm. right? So the weakness in other parts of the channel, I mean, the channel will be as strong as its weakest link, right?
Correct.
So to overcome that, what is happening is that companies are starting at a point, then realizing weaknesses somewhere in the channel and expanding into it. and therefore they're doing things way beyond what they actually wanted to do themselves, right?
Mhm.
So actually, it's a chicken and egg here, Rakesh. I mean, what we ourselves realize in companies we've invested in is that after we've invested, we're kind of trying to find partners who will develop adjacent spaces as quickly as we want them to make sure that we are able to provide the solution the way we envisaged it, which will mean bringing in investors at various parts and different investors, because there will be physical infrastructure, there will be technology pieces, there will be logistics pieces, and the investor set for all of this may not be common, right?
True.
So as complex as the solution at the of e-waste is, the financing of such businesses is also very complex, and it's very similar to financing infrastructure solutions.
Sure.
They're very complex. They need to be cut and diced, different types of finances at different levels of the solution. And that is what is probably stopping the funding of this space as smoothly as one would have expected, because we all know it's a huge problem and all of us want to be part of the solution.
Sure. And what do you think so a very brief one here before I jump back to the gentleman here. What do you think would the entrepreneurs really need to do to make it investment worthy? I know that you gave a larger picture, but if it has to be specific, 2-3 points, other than I know that probably governance is one part which I want to cover separately between three of you, but anything other than that you think would really be encouraging for investors to look at this market?
Well, and as you said, I mean, we'll come to the ecosystem and the governance later. When we invested, what we were looking for in the entrepreneur we invested into, or the team that we invested into, was the ability to think big picture from a vision perspective, because the vision's very hazy at this point in time in the space, right? As well as the ability to execute at a micro level, because things are happening at a very, very almost doorstep level in the waste space. Mm-hmm. So you need an entrepreneur who can think through that whole thing, as very, very rare in my view. I mean, I really impressed with Pranshu and Karan that they have actually taken on this challenge for themselves. It's not at all an easy challenge to actually handle.
Sure. I would still like to tell the audience that it's an interesting space, so stick to it. Coming back to Karan, Pranshu, Karan, probably starting with you here on this question, and I want to have this question pushed to Pranshu as well at the same time. We just heard the concerns that comes from an investor mindset. But then if you look at a general business perspective, I think if things start making the economic sense, start making the investment sense as well, right? So what is it that you guys as a business do, and what is it that the entrepreneurs who want to enter this space should be doing to make the economic sense out of this business, which means the unit economics equivalent in your business, the metrics that you look at, and what makes it really a solid profit-making business.
So, as rightly pointed out, unfortunately, anybody who enters this space has to play a lot of roles because the ecosystem is still not developed. Mm-hmm. But having said that, India, which is true for any industry and even for e-waste, what happens is over a period of time, I think every recycler or any stakeholder or any aggregator finds its own space. Say, for example, just like any other industry, if you're in the automobile, there could be distribution, there could be manufacturing, there could be auto ancillary. So in e-waste recycling, waste management as a whole, there are a lot of people who have found their niche. And sometimes it could be geographical. Like, you could be, because of the size of the market and because of, they've rightly said that you have to be micro as well. Am I able to solve the problem in my area? Am I able to solve the problem in my state? Maharashtra, for example, recycled only 1% of electronic waste in 2019. So similarly, every state is a country in itself if you were to compare globally. So that is a opportunity and that is a size of the challenge. So for us, what we are trying to do is, and our journey also started the same way, educating also government officials, because as an entrepreneur, you go through a lot of it. Because for them to enforce the legislation is, they also have to be aware. So you have to take everybody along. As now, I think as an organization, we want to focus on innovative ways of collection a lot. At the same time, ensure that, we are recyclers already. So we build that capability as well. But some examples that I gave you is that now at least in a lot of cities, in the top 10 cities across the country, we see some major traction happening. I think COVID also has been a great catalyst. I think if the conversation around environment, recycling, waste management, what we saw pre-COVID and post-COVID has been, there has been a substantial rise. So that definitely gave a chance for everyone to take a pause, look around and try to ponder on it. So this, I think, it has come with a great amount of positivity and we are trying to capitalize on it. So the unit of matrix for us, of course, it will be how much waste are you collecting and you recycling. But like I gave you some examples, the kind of collection models that we are building, partnering with municipalities, partnering with a lot of, at the ground level, partnerships and collaboration with a lot of people, that is really helping us. And at the same time, anybody who is a social entrepreneur, I'm sure, has to be aware, and I think especially in waste management, is to stick around. Because one thing that I keep sharing in a lot of my conversations is, itna kachara jama karke kahan jayenge? Somebody, someday, our work will be appreciated.
True.
I think that gives a lot of confidence to stick around and keep doing the work that you're doing.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And I will probably pick one of the aspects of your statements right now and push it back to Dev in a moment, and just giving you heads up, Dev. I would like to hear your thoughts around the bonus points of the impact these businesses create. I know that you are not an impact fund at Triton, but then would still like to come back and hear on that. Pranshu, back to you on the economic sense.
Yeah, this is a big question mark for me. The reality is the unit economics don't work. And we may want the investors continue to push this, that, no, it should work. If it were working, market would have already solved the problem. The reality is, look at the amount of investment which goes in combining multiple type of elements into compounds and then into a component. And look at the amount of money which is being allowed to dismantle it back into its elemental form and being, so that it can be reutilized. So the monies that we are talking are just so disproportionate, and it is expected that recycling will generate crazy amount of revenues. Well, it cannot. If a mobile phone which is sold at, let's say, at 50,000 rupees, the material value in that phone is only 70 to 80 rupees. And I'm talking the material value. A lot of people are getting confused that, this material value will pay for doing all the processing, all the collection, all the logistics. It just cannot. And that's the fundamental reason why we are in a mess. Pet industry is not in a mess because pet gets picked up because it has inherent value. It's a monomer. While here we are talking of a mess of materials, compounds which will take crazy amount of engineering to be segregated. So while we are investing crazy, very good amount of money in combining, there is almost no investment or engineering investment into separating it. So yes, for certain things you may hit unit economics, but if I were to talk about true circular economy, are we even near to that? And can the unit economics work in that case? The answer is a big no. Money has to come. Someone has to pay for that money. It could be either consumers, because we as people, when we buy the product, we, either the product prices have to be raised, which then make people like me and you responsible for paying for this recycling, because right now no one is paying for it. And we may want to brush it out, but this remains. And in almost all dialogues that I have, I'm always pushed that, there should be some way of making it profitable. The answer is, look at the inherent value of materials. That is what you gain out of recycling, and that is, of a best of the best phone, you only have 50 to 70 rupees. For a simple feature phones, maximum value that you may derive in terms of materials is maybe 20 rupees.
Interesting.
Yeah.
As I hear, one of the things that you're saying as an important aspect of it is the material segregation, right? Is there enough research and engineering, or I would say the right amount of innovation already there in the market, or is that a separate opportunity by itself?
I would say it's a big opportunity on its own. We, for example, have been trying to figure out what can be done with e-waste plastics. And believe me, it may sound very simple, but the complexity in just simple plastics is crazy. You have a mess of ABS and PC, HIPs, polycarbonate in different proportions, and then the age, because e-waste has a huge time lag before it comes. So it has been exposed to various elements, which changes the fundamental property of these plastics. So thinking of re-engineering that is a nightmare. Mm-hmm. We are collaborating with Covestro, which is a global engineering company on this space. And even they find it's very struggling to find a way out of this mess. So I believe this is a big space. Yes, there are certain solutions which are there, but are they enough for true circularity? And I'm consistently sticking to the word circularity, because that is what we are all looking forward to. It is not about finding an answer, converting laptop plastics to benches, and then benches, at some point in time, what happens to those benches?
Sure.
So if we are to truly find answers, there is crazy amount of work which has to be done on the research and development side.
Sure. That's interesting. So I think I will go to Dev with the heads up that I had given, and then we'll perhaps touch the point of the regulations and the regulatory framework and governance. But then before I get to Dev, I'm very curious, and I'm kind of inspired right now with this conversation, that despite the challenges that we see, and we know that in reality the market opportunity is very big, it still has inherent challenges into it. What drives two of you gentlemen every day? Pranshu, you want to start with that?
Okay, I personally, there has been this huge urge to solve this issue. We started Karo Sambhav, named it Karo Sambhav, our organization Karo Sambhav, because it sounded impossible. So that the movement powers us. And the biggest issue is we are in the decade of change.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we are very close to the turning point. We are, and we are still, alarm bells are not ringing enough. Not everyone is pushing the envelope to change. And I think, to me, I have, for some reason, for the last 4 years, I have a clock running in my head, which is continuously telling that time's up, and time is now. If you can do whatever now. There will be no time to do whatever tomorrow and the day after. So I think, again, I am also by education, an environmentalist. I studied under Thomas Lindquist, who coined the term EPR. So probably some of those things have deeply influenced in the last 15-20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then work culture at Nokia was so fabulous. I mean, it was fully driven to be a truly sustainable company. So I think those early stage learnings have shaped a lot of mindset.
Awesome. Karan, what drives you every day?
So, in fact, there is a quote by Oscar Wilde that says that all of us are in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. And that's very literal for, entrepreneurs who are there in waste management. And I don't have any education or background in environment. It was my experience that I used to visit the mine very often. And it used to dwell on me the impact that mankind has on environment. And, there's a very one-way relationship. So that thought made me quit my job. I started this. And I think what drives us is, once you are aware about the problem, you can't run away from it. And the sheer amount of waste that we see around us, somebody has to do it. Like, in fact, when we were chatting initially, we were just discussing about the initiatives that we're taking. I think someone has to do it. And I think what has been at least some relief, I don't think it's a big achievement, but is the pre-COVID and the current scenario. Maybe anybody who would have been talking in 17, 18, 19 would have been a little more depressed. I think there is some amount of appreciation or some amount of acceptance around this, and I think, like, Barack Obama also once put it that we are the first generation to feel the effect of climate change and the last one to do anything about it. So I think, yeah, it's now I think it's very crucial. At the same time, anybody who takes effort in this space has to do it. But yeah, I think the sheer size of problem, and if we don't do it, who else will do it?
True.
That is what drives us every day.
True. No, I think we all at heart know that it's a time bomb we are sitting on, right? And it has to be taken care of or diffused now. Dave, back to you. So we hear this, right? So we hear that this is probably a business. If I have to find a right anomaly, I would say probably developing a drug, right? So you have a cycle. You bring up a molecule, you go for trials, you get into the approvals. It has a long cycle of 10, 12, 15 years before it really starts making money, right? But it has an impact, right? So are investors really looking at that as an impact, whether they are a so-called impact fund or not? But then it does have a solid impact on the world. How do you count in that calculation? Any investor count that as part of the calculations when looking at the investments?
See, as I said, I mean, earlier, that everyone wants to be part of the solution, right? Of course, the returns are what drive most investors. But I think, at the end of the day, you also want to be able to tell stories of how you actually attacked and solved problems that were extremely critical to be solved. I think that's in many ways what drives a lot of us who are in unlisted markets anyway, to create businesses that we are proud of, right? And to Pranshu and Karan, I would just say that, listen, guys, the time has come. It is upon you now. And, I look at this a little bit from the outside in. And even with Recycle, which is a company we invested in, I mean, we spent 2.5-3 years with Abhay to fine tune the business model. And I knew him for a long time. And I kept telling him, "Nahi, Abhay, I can't make sense of this yet." Till one day he sent me a deck and I said, "Now you've got it." This is now. And we didn't even ask any questions then. We said, "We're in," because the whole. And I think after that, all of the things that we are seeing from the ecosystem, right, is extremely positive. So while it is a very challenging problem, I think the time has definitely come for the space. But I think, Rakesh, as I said earlier, and this is an important thing in this space. See, any company in this space is not going to be able to probably handle or get to its goal with one type of investor, and again, I can take the aspect of just Recycle, for example, because I can talk about that. There are certain aspects of that business that will require the building out of infrastructure. A typical tech investor will not understand that.
Sure.
They will find it asset heavy, as they will call it, right? There are certain parts which are very tech, which will probably involve a lot of red on your P&L for a period of time, which a lot of infrastructure investors will not understand, right?
Sure.
There are parts which are very clearly impact, right? To the extent that you may actually need to deal with certain non-profits. Forget investors. You'll have to deal with certain not-for-profits. You may have to deal with certain grants from corporates, from the World Bank, whatever, from development institutions. So this is going to involve businesses understanding the complexity of financing a business plan. It's not going to be a Series A, Series B, Series C, and unicorn, it's going to be a lot more complex than that. And that's probably what makes it extremely interesting. But the good thing is that we are seeing people from every aspect of this chain very actively engaging and ready to engage at scale.
Sure.
And Pranshu's right in saying that, look, the plastic problem's much easier to solve. in some ways. At least it looks today that we know how to solve it much better than e-waste, you know.
Makes
And
sense.
to that point, I would say that, look, EPR is going to be very, very critical in that process, because as he said, who will pay for this? And bulk of the profits today are locked with the manufacturer. If the manufacturer doesn't pay for the recycling, then who will? Because they are actually making money out of putting all this product into the market. So ultimately, in some shape or form, they have to subsidize the collection and the recycling. And that is where the whole governance and advocacy bit will become very critical ultimately to make the unit economics work.
Sure.
For recycling.
Pranshul, you seem to have something to add.
Yeah, I'd like to add here, and this is a bit of caution. You know, and I've been working with, so IFC has been an advisor to Karosamba for a long time. They're not an investor, but have very, very closely worked for now several years. One of the things that I always, you know, and if we look at globally, how EPR-based systems or systems where product stewardship is at the center have worked is, you know, because the costs are being loaded only to one player, which is the brands or the producers, they will try to minimize the cost of compliance. And rightly so. I mean, everyone will try to find efficiency. And if proper controls, checks and balances are not created, and I'm here even bringing the term investors. This is not related to governance in the country, but I'm saying even from an investor point of view, their investees will try to lower the costs, you know, to just get clients meet the numbers, you know, which are suggested by the investors. We have seen this across the world. And this has led to systemic failure. Why? Because someone is pushing the numbers to be so down, because all the matrices have to be hit. Number of clients that you have onboarded, number amount of waste that you recycle, which essentially means that the price being offered for doing the whole set of services so low that it is undoable. Yeah. And today we are in that mess. You know, the prices for e-waste management, plastic waste management have come so rock bottom that if you start to do simple math, they don't add up. You know, sometimes I've been really wondering, how does recycling happen at the cost at which it is happening in our country, in multiple other countries? And this has led to complete systemic failures, whether it is in Germany, UK, you know, we can look at multiple economies where this has happened. So we need to be absolutely cautious as investors, as regulators, as auditors on, you know, understanding the finance of this, that what is the right money, where is it going, does it add up? Because the moment we look, and I have been having big debates with Thomas Lindquist, who coined the term EPR. And this is the only point he kept on telling me: if you do not do the math again and again and again, you will lose it. So always check all the numbers adding. If they don't, then sorry, something is going wrong.
That's interesting. But then I think that kind of stands true with every business, right? You have to go back and forth on the numbers and the math. But then, yeah, what you say makes sense. But then one of the points that you brought in here is the challenges and the systemic failure in multiple geographies as example, right? And that kind of takes me to the next and probably the last segment we want to touch. And before we get on to that, I would like to make a quick statement to the attendees here. If you have any questions, you may please start typing it in the appropriate window. We will take it towards the end as we are coming to the final segment of our panel today, and that's being regulatory and the governance system, as we were speaking about earlier, right? So if I have to start with, I probably would like to hear which geographies, per your knowledge today, are probably the best benchmarks in terms of both the regulatory framework as well as governance and the government support all put together, if you have to talk as a package, which are doing great in e-waste management particularly, and waste management in general. Any thoughts?
I can think of France, where EPR has been the most successful. Mm-hmm. We are looking at 30 plus sectors where EPR is successfully being implemented, and a lot of innovation is being done by the policymakers themselves.
Interesting.
So even Nordic countries for that matter. But again, the context of all these countries is very different. The behavior of people, and because the costs of running a system in these countries versus India is very different. Here, the costs, our significant costs go in getting the waste back. So people don't want to give it away. Whereas in most of those economies, people give it away. And then it's a matter of how do I logistically move it to the best possible recycler, get it done in a clean way. Our nightmare is getting the waste itself first. Even if you are at the doorstep, उसके बाद भी कितने पैसों में खरीदेंगे, there is a fight about how much money are you going to give back. And it will take time. I think as Karan mentioned, and as there are a lot of awareness programs that are happening. We are clearly seeing a shift in consumer behavior also if we look at multiple surveys that are done.
Sure.
So hopefully it will change, but today the biggest cost is because of the procurement, and that changes the dynamics in this country.
Yeah, so I think that connects to a point around the accountability, and we'll come back to that in a little moment. But Karan, what would be your benchmark if you have to say that this particular country or geography or government is doing brilliant?
I think I'm still trying to learn India and Indians first. And like, Pranchu said that getting waste itself is difficult. So you'll be surprised the kind of incident that happened. People say that we want to give away electronic waste, but they'll dump all sort of. So these are behavioral challenges, social thing that, how does an Indian consumer behave? And so they'll say that we are giving electronic waste, but they'll give all mixed plastic, etc. And one more point that Pranchu made is very, very important to this sector as a whole, that the cost of procurement is a very big challenge. The cost at which the waste lands at your doorstep, and then the processing cost, and then the end product, and then the recovery. And I think one more point that was mentioned earlier, I would just like to add one more thing, that how it is different from other industries is because there is climate change. There is the actual waste that is being generated, and the transparency that somebody can build. For us, I think in the next 5 years, the premiums will definitely be derived.
Sure.
If you compare this to any other industry, like if somebody can really build that transparency and say that this is the kind of waste that has been moved away from landfill, hence these are the kind of carbon emissions saved, this is the kind of effort that has been taken. This, from an investor perspective, what we see is definitely going to pay results and pay dividends in the long term, but somebody should be ready to hold on till a little longer.
Sure.
And in terms of geographies, again, I have limited knowledge, honestly. But I think there have been some amount of investments in UK. I think EPR and PROs have got funded recyclers. In terms of capex, like I mentioned, that you could be focusing on a particular category and then grow big in that. And there have been a lot of successful investments in many parts of the world.
Sure. So if we, I get that. So if we just park the other geographies for a moment, and as a e-waste recycling entrepreneur, what would be your wish list from the government here in our country that you think would really drive and support this business?
So see, in a very ideal scenario, so there are two contradictory facts. One thing is what Dave rightly mentioned is that at the end of the day, so in a waste management parlance, there's something called as let the polluters pay. The fact that we have such complex and so many electronics out in the market is because, of course, it is innovation. It is definitely helping mankind. It is helping people get connected, but they are the ones who are benefiting the most. So there has to be a lot of enforcement. There has to be a lot of clear authorities where, this has to be implemented, and they have to do it rigorously. There has to be accountability to that. Sure. Second thing is on the government front and our, so see, one is the lawmaker. Second is the person who executes it. So even at the execution level, there is a big mismatch. I'm sure as stakeholders, me, Pranchu, and a lot of other people are trying constantly to uplift them as well. Because, the municipalities have to understand the importance. The government officers have to understand the importance. But there has to be a lot of investment internally to ensure that people understand that why what we are doing is important. For us, it's a different drive. But there has to be a lot of information that has to be shared. And second thing is, at a consumer level, again, wo kitna milega? Yeah. We are talking about car recycling, but if you have an old Maruti 800 and if a recycler is going to pay you 10,000, but out in the market, you're going to get fetched 25,000, you'll of course give it where you get a higher price. So these factors, because also India is a very entrepreneurial country, somebody or the other will try to make something out of it. It could be hazardous, it could be anything. वो मतलब you give a bomb also कुछ ना कुछ तो उसका बना के दे देगा.
Very interesting.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
I get that.
yeah. So my wish list is big.
Enforcement.
Yeah, enforcement to begin with, because I think very clearly it has to be a lot of these brands and a lot of these companies who have to come forward and
Sure.
ensure that what they have benefited. Also, as a multinational company, also what they have benefited from India is huge.
Yeah.
And as stakeholders, we understand that it is about time that they also participate.
Sure. So the last 5 minutes, but then on this accountability and governance part, Pranshu, something around what I heard South Africa had done, right? And I know that you were pretty vocal about it. Would like to make a quick mention about what it was?
So they have just come up with a regulation, and it has some very interesting pieces to it, which I think are very nub the issue in the bud itself. So what they have done is, first of all, they have made any data sets that will be generated out of the system to be publicly declared, so that you have crowds sourcing of of analytics. Anyone can analyze what is happening, including all the costs being or any money being spent in the system has to be made visible for public. Mm-hmm. Now, what it does is it allows a lot of analytics, it allows a lot of sense, and in case there are wrongdoings, and even if government is unable to catch, then there are people, there are watchdogs who will catch certain things. So I find that piece fairly interesting. Another thing that they have done is that they have made this whole space not for profit. Now it has its own benefits and its own issues. Not for profit kind of pushes investors out, but also brings honesty in if managed well. So I think we are also seeing, so there are some bits of it. But to address your previous question, what is the wish list? For me, I think if we can focus on creation of a secondary materials market, which essentially is the output of recycling. Right now, all our indicators are on the input of recycling. We are measuring how much waste has been collected, how much waste has been sent for recycling. Ideally, we should be measuring how much secondary materials have been generated, how much of it has been used back in products and has gotten back into the economy, because that balances the whole equation. So if a market gets created, one may also be able to fund this whole space by selling products with better secondary materials at a higher price. There is a good value addition which is happening on that side.
Makes sense.
Second is data sets availability. Today, there is a big struggle on knowing, if you talk to a state pollution control board, their biggest challenge is having data sets on what is happening in the country. Kaun kya kar raha hai. So if we are able to provide these data sets, and it could be to the public, it could be, one can decide. But if we allow this data-based decision making, enforcement becomes very easy. Right now, in the absence of these data sets, at a enforcement level, you are always left with, it's always a guesswork. Probably this guy is good, and then it becomes a branding decision. Whosoever has branded himself well becomes the good one versus what the reality is. So I think, we need to work on how do we generate data sets, make them publicly available, allow, a lot more organizations rather than right now, everything of circular economy is kind of a prerogative of Ministry of Environment. I mean, it will require involvement of Ministry of Finance. It will require Ministry of Mining, a lot of sectors. This is a multi-sectoral, solution. So, and goes beyond just enforcement in its, while enforcement is super critical, I am all for it, but we have to rethink, that can traditional enforcement even work in such a sector?
Sure. Well, that's interesting. Now, I think those are some brilliant insight. I hope somebody from the government is actually in the audience and listening to us. If not, we'll try and see if we can compile these points and somehow get it across, because that's one of the points that TSS as a whole is focusing on, right? How do we have an inclusive involvement of all the different stakeholders? We'll see if we can pass on your wish list to the right stakeholders as well. But then perhaps the last part, Dave, what would you suggest entrepreneurs who are getting into this? While I know that you have made a lot of points around it, to really make it worthwhile both for the climate, their business, and in turn the investors? And also, what would you tell the investors when you have to say, dude, look at it, it has a real impact, right? So let's work with the entrepreneurs to make it viable and not just look at if investing when it is viable, right? So you as investors work very closely with the entrepreneurs to make things absolute sense out of it. I'm sure you can work along with other entrepreneurs as well. When I say you, I mean investment community in general.
So my one thing that I did kind of mention earlier, Rakesh, and re-emphasize it, in this space, entrepreneurs are going to have to learn to work very inclusively.
Mm-hmm.
See, there is a natural tendency of disruptors to trash existing players, the ecosystem, whatever. But in this space, you're going to have to work with the informal sector. You're going to have to work with the government. You're going to have to work with the municipalities. You're going to have to work with a lot of inefficiency, undercurrents of corruption, and hopefully not get sucked into it. But, but in all of that, what I see is that everybody now wants a solution to this problem. That is there. It is true across all stakeholders, and somebody will pay for it if you stay with it. And I think the timelines now for that return cycle is much shorter than it was 5 years ago.
True.
So don't lose patience now. The time is now. And I think investors who are beginning to get into this, and I see enough investors wanting to participate in this. If you're able to show them that you're pulling in all of these various players, and I'm very happy to talk to entrepreneurs about how that can happen. But I think that's what entrepreneurs need to do.
Very cool. Oh, I think the brilliant insights, lot of good thoughts, the right amount of, I would say, the wish list across to the government as well. Fair amount of benchmarking, a lot of thoughts for the new entrepreneurs who may be looking at this space for the opportunities. I really appreciate you all taking time to discuss this topic with us today, being part of the TiE Sustainability Summit. And enlightening all the audience who are attending us today. So thank you so much again, gentlemen. I really wish you all the best. And thank you for all the impact that you guys are making.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Pleasure. Take care.